Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Stukent expert session. My name is Trevor Erickson, and I will be the webinar organizer today. We are extremely lucky and privileged to have Scott Cowley with us. He comes to us from the sunny state of Arizona, where he is a marketing strategy instructor and PhD student at Arizona State University. He's researching social media and digital strategy there. Before he moved down to Arizona, he was the head of SEO at a industry-leading mobile accessories company called Zagg. You probably have a few of their products on some of your mobile devices, and we're just excited to have him with us. And without any further ado, we will turn the time over to Scott.
All right, thanks, Trevor. So today we're covering SEO, social media, and content marketing, trying to get all three done in just half an hour. So Trevor did fine on the introduction. You can catch me at on Twitter at Scott Cowley, or at my website, scottcowley.com. But let's jump into it because we've got a lot to cover in a very short amount of time, and want to make sure that we cover as much as we can. Just to give you an overview of where we're going to go today. The objective is to make sure we cover SEO, social media, and content marketing, and specifically how those three items relate to driving profit from a business standpoint. So we'll give you a little bit of an overview of what the landscape is like now, how those three pieces fit into it, and talk about some of the theoretical and tactical sides to executing those things well as a business. So if you want to look at the digital landscape as it currently exists, the website really sits at the center of it. I mean, obviously there are a few different business models that exist online. E-commerce, lead generation, advertising, and subscription are just four of the major business models, but you see that there are a lot of different channels of distribution and platforms that support and drive traffic to the website and help businesses fulfill that center goal. Really, I like to break things out into owned media, paid media, and earned media. And really what we're covering today, amazingly enough, we talk about SEO and organic search. It represents only one of the elements of earned media, and yet it's a huge component, and we'll talk more about that as well. Content marketing really described almost all of owned media online. And then social media, when you think about it, can be represented as owned media in terms of the profiles that companies are creating for themselves, but also as earned media as people share information about the company, as they spread word of mouth online about products and services. So you see that there's a lot out there that we're not even going to cover today. But what we are going to cover represents some very big portions of online traffic and revenue generation. So let's first start and talk about search engine optimization. Some people have a lot more familiarity with this than others, and it's actually not that complicated. But I think it's helpful to understand first, why is this an important industry? What is it about SEO that drives profit? So when you think about how people search, you and I search every day for things online. Some of those searches are informational. Some of them are navigational. We're just trying to get to a particular website, or just trying to get to a page that has, where then we can refine our search once, or navigate somewhere once we get there. But a lot of the searches that take place are transactional. And in a typical advertising model, like you see simplified on the left, a lot of advertising is designed to promote awareness about companies and then move those people from just being aware that the company and products exist to actually considering them when they're thinking about making purchase decisions, to where ultimately they intend to and finally make purchases. Well, what happens with search is it actually speeds up the process. People are already aware of what they want in some general sense, and so they're much more primed to want to buy when they're performing especially transactional searches, trying to get what they need. However, they don't always know where they're going to get it, or who they're going to purchase from. And so that's a lot of what drives the success of search engine optimization. Having your website show up first, or hopefully near the top when somebody searches for something generic and they don't have a particular company or website in mind, ends up driving a lot of profit. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So the chart on the left, far left, is what we call a heat map. So what you're looking at is a typical Google search result. And this is really representative of what usually happens if we're looking at all of the searches people perform. You see the dark red represents where people are focusing most of their attention when they do a search. They're not looking down at the websites that show up in the number 9 or number 10 positions. They're largely focused on what appears at the very top of those search results. And you can even see in the middle chart talks about the amount of time people spend looking at the individual results, both looking at some of the paid ads that show up on search results, as well as the organic listings, which companies have a lot more interest in because they don't have to pay for those listings. And then on the right, you'll notice that this represents some metrics associated with how often people actually click through to websites depending upon the position that they show up after they perform a search. So you'll see that on average about almost 20% of the clicks on a search engine result page are going to the company or website that shows up in the first position. So naturally you can understand why people would want to show up there. They're going to get a lot higher consideration from people when they're looking at making purchases. Here's an example of one that I've dealt with personally at Zagg. One of the keywords that we were interested in showing up for and ranking well for is the term iPad accessories, because that can drive a lot of traffic and revenue. And so you can see how the SEO funnel works from the standpoint of, let's say we start out where there are 27,000 monthly searches for that term iPad accessories. Now, we don't necessarily know what people are searching for, if they're interested in certain types of products versus others, but it represents there's a fairly commercial search intent behind that term. So people searching for iPad accessories are likely to be interested in looking at specific products with potential to purchase. So let's say we start out with 27,000 monthly searches. Let's assume that we're able to rank number 1 for that keyword, and optimistically get a 20% click-through rate. So we get 20% of those 27,000 that click through to our website. And then let's say, on average, a typical e-commerce conversion rate could range anywhere from 0.5% to much higher. Could be even as high as 5 to 10%. But let's be conservative and say we only convert 1% of those people into making a purchase. And then let's assume we are able to make $40 in profit every time we convert somebody. Well, that eventually translates into over $2,000 in a month for showing up number 1 for that one single keyword. And the great part about search engine optimization and SEO is that when you rank well for a competitive term like iPad accessories, there's a high correlation with you having good rankings for other related terms or longer terms. We often call those long tail keywords. So you can see how this can be very profitable if you are operating a website with really good search engine optimization that is able to pull in a lot of different keywords. It can result in a lot of revenue down the line. Okay, so let's now talk about what exactly goes into determining who ranks in which position. This is really the core of what SEO is. And I like to describe it in 2 parts, and it's a lot more complicated than that. The fact is that Google looks at over 200 different factors when determining whether a page should rank above or below a different page for a particular search term. But let's keep it simple and talk about SEO in terms of 2 components. We have on-page SEO. So how relevant is the content on a web page? And then off-page SEO, which represents how popular is that page in the general landscape of different web pages online, and that's usually measured in at least in Google's algorithms and other search engines by the number and the quality of the links that are pointing from other websites to your website. Now, one thing I do want to clarify that a lot of people get confused is that Google ranks pages and not websites as a whole. So if you hear somebody say, oh, my website ranks #1 in Google, what they really mean is that I have a page on my website that ranks #1 for a particular keyword. So it's important to make sure that we are talking about pages, because one page can be very relevant for a keyword while another page may be completely irrelevant, and both of those could be on the same site. But Google basically crawls the web using technical spiders to create an index of all of the pages it can find on the internet. And it does that by just going from link to link and just following those links to create a large index of pages, their attributes, and then algorithms, Google's algorithm basically matches up those pages with the search queries or the keywords that people are searching for. So that if somebody searches for a word like iPad accessories, Google can easily and quickly, very quickly, crawl its index and say, okay, based on this person, their previous search history, where they're located, we think that this particular page should show up #1, this other page should show up #2, etc., for that particular search result. But really, it's those two parts that determine who ranks in which position. The on-page SEO, or the relevancy of the content on the website, and then the popularity of that web page based on link factors. So let's talk first about on-page and relevancy. So a lot of SEO really has to do with keywords, right? Which keyword are you searching for, and does the website actually use those keywords on its pages? And if we can have a good match there, then that's a highly relevant web page, and Google's more likely to display it. But it does start with keywords and understanding who's actually searching for which terms. And if you're a business, you need to figure out which keywords do we want to show up for that are likely to be very relevant to our business, so that if somebody searches for something like iPad accessories, 90% of the time they're expecting to find a website exactly like my website. But a lot of it starts with understanding search volumes for particular keywords. Now, Google has a free tool called the AdWords Keyword Planner that they use primarily for their paid search, but you can go to the URL at the bottom and you can actually enter different keywords in and see the average monthly searches for particular terms. So you can see how I've put in a few different words here related to dog toys, right? Dog toys getting 12,100 monthly searches, and then down the line, depending upon what people are actually searching for. But that's a great place to start, because then you can say, okay, I know that these are the most popular terms, therefore I may want to optimize my pages for these terms to show up. And then how exactly do you optimize? I think that's another critical component of understanding what makes a page optimized for a particular keyword. Well, Google's looking at a bunch of factors, like I said, but some of the core ones that they're looking for are right on the page itself. They're looking at the URL of the page. They're looking at the page title. Now, a lot of people aren't familiar with the fact that every web page has a title, and you can see up here in the corner of the browser here that there's a page title associated with this page. So Google's looking to say, are the keywords that someone searched for actually found up in that page title? They're also looking at the body content, right? What's in the body of the page. The H1 tag is almost like a header tag to describe what the page is about. You'll see this commonly on a lot of websites. Like this one says, "Welcome to PSI." Well, unless somebody's searching for PSI, that header tag isn't necessarily going to be really relevant to a lot of other search terms. And then the meta description is something that Google's not taking into account when they are deciding which pages to rank. However, that meta description does show up in the search result. And so you can determine what the page is about and give a detailed description there, and people are more likely to click through to your website from a search result when they read that meta description that's compelling, if it prompts them to click through. Okay, so as a result of the fact that on-page SEO is a critical piece, and probably the most critical in determining whether your site ranks best or worst, I do want to talk about and just show you some of the other trends we're seeing lately in terms of search, how people are searching. This is from Google Trends. So one of the key trends that we're seeing recently is that people want websites to do the work for them. So no longer are they content with just searching for headphones. They want to know what the best headphones are, and so they're more likely to search for terms and use superlatives like best, biggest, fastest in their search results. And so companies need to take advantage of these and incorporate those type of terms into their content. Another example are dates. People realize now that there's so much information online that a lot of that isn't organized very well, and Google may even be showing old content that may be outdated or irrelevant. And so people are modifying their searches, incorporating years is the most common modifier to try and get content that's more relevant. So that's why in many cases it's appropriate to incorporate the year into some content you have that may change over time in terms of its relevancy. So putting 2014, for example, would make that more relevant, more likely to show up for these date-specific terms. And the other one that I find potentially most fascinating is that people are now starting to type in full questions rather than shortened, general specifics. Here's one example. There are a lot of other examples that demonstrate this, but you look at the trend over the last several years, people searching for oil change instructions versus a longer, more specific self-referential term like, how do I change my oil? Now, in terms of optimizing for these type of keywords, it doesn't necessarily, it may not make a lot of sense for you to have some of your core product pages be phrased in a very long way like this, but that's one of the reasons why people are moving heavily into things like blogging, because it would make much more sense and be very natural for a company to have a corporate blog and create a post that has one of these longer terms that's able to pull in some of that, what we call long tail traffic, and then direct them more toward the business's core products and services. And that's a lot of what content marketing is about, is capturing different audiences and different intents and different keywords, and then once you capture that traffic, being able to integrate that with your products and services to sell those things better. So the other big piece of SEO is called off-page SEO. Like I mentioned, we're talking about how popular is your website or that particular web page. How valuable are the links that are pointing to it? How many do you have? What types of sites are you getting links from to your website? You can compare it to like a big voting game where every link to your web page counts as a vote, and Google's looking at the votes to determine who should rank for which terms. Now, one of the tools you can use that can be helpful in determining where you sit in relation to your links is a free tool called OpenSiteExplorer.org. And this is a really good and easy way to see how many links are pointing to my website right now in terms of quality and quantity. And you can also figure out how strong is my collection of links compared to my competitors. Let's say, for example, that you have pages that are perfectly optimized from a content standpoint for particular keywords that you're going after, and you're still not ranking very well for those. Well, a lot of the lack of rankings is explained by how good your backlink portfolio is. So you can use a tool like this to see, how am I compared to those that are ranking ahead of me? What types of links do I need to try and acquire? You can also use this to identify maybe some harmful links that could be damaging your ability to be seen as reputable or popular. Okay. In fact, if we go back to the landscape photo that we showed before, there are a lot of different sources for links. When you think about the fact that all of these types of websites or content types could be supplying links to your website. One of the most common ones would be news sites. Those represent a source of really popular and authoritative links. But there are a lot of different link sources. Let me just chat briefly about some of the frequent SEO mistakes I see. One of the ones that ends up impacting a lot of sites is duplicate content, either because a lot of their pages have the exact same content, because really you should be targeting maybe 2 or 3 keywords per page and not cannibalizing, so not trying to have all of your pages going after the exact same keywords, but really creating silos that are targeting those keywords. Or if you have a lot of content that was already existing on other websites across the web, that can be a damaging aspect that could hurt you in your ability to rank. Not enough content. I mean, really, any page that you want to rank well should have at least 100 words of content in order to rank. Poor keyword usage is the most common. People just aren't using the keywords on their pages that they are trying to show up for. And then, like I already mentioned, you may have great optimization from a content standpoint, but your site authority and popularity hasn't been developed enough because you don't have any of those link signals that Google's looking for. Now, there are other signals that Google is also looking at to determine, are you a real website or a real company? You can think about, what would a normal company have in its website that would indicate that it's legitimate? Things like having a fresh content source. A lot of websites have like a press page where they are constantly adding new information about what the company's doing. A blog is another form of fresh content. Are people talking about us online on social networks? Are they linking to us? Are they linking to our content or sharing our content from those places? Even something like a privacy policy could indicate to Google that, yes, this is a legitimate web presence. And Google's trying to determine which are the most relevant sites to rank. What are good websites where we want to send traffic and help people out that way? So, but one of the things Google is looking at is social signals. What we refer to in the SEO world is, social signals is the same as social media signals. So, are people talking about us online? Is there online word of mouth? Are they linking to our website or our content from places like Facebook or Twitter or Google Plus, especially now that Google is in the game? So let's talk about social media and how we link that to profit. So one of the things that we know right now is there's very little commerce actually happening on social networks. You can't, in most cases, go to a Facebook page and buy something directly on that page. A lot of what is happening on social media centers around 2 main activities. One is building online communities around the brand, and the other one is driving traffic. Social media is a traffic driver and a distribution channel for company content. But we're talking about community building. We already know that there are a lot of advantages to building strong brand communities. Right, having more loyal customers, retaining them at a higher rate, getting them to spread positive word of mouth about us. Even the fact that they are much more likely to quickly adopt and purchase new products that we come out with represents a huge advantage. And then, as you can see, customer satisfaction also tends to be higher when there are strong communities. And even spending per transaction, they've shown that people who are loyal to the company are likely to spend more. So building an online community through social media represents a great source of competitive advantage. Now, the one I want to focus a little bit more heavily on is the idea of social media as a content platform and distribution channel. So really, you can't do anything on social media without having some content. All of those networks represent a place where companies are posting content and driving traffic to content on the website. So it all starts with content. And you can kind of understand the link between content and revenue growth from the standpoint that as you work on producing and finding content and distributing it in a way that engages your community is likely to grow and become stronger and and coalesce around your brand. As that happens, your ability to drive more traffic to your website increases, and as you're able to drive more traffic, then you have that many more people who are being exposed to your products and services and are more likely to convert and be a revenue source for you, which then you can use to develop even better content and come to understand your audiences better to get higher levels of engagement. One of the things that I encourage people to do is to match up what resources they have in terms of content with the available channels, because really not every business should be on every social media channel. A lot of it, I think, depends on what your resources are and where the opportunities are. If you're a business that has absolutely nothing to do with good visual imagery, well, then it may not make sense to have a presence on Instagram. You're not likely to be able to build a strong brand community if there's nothing about your business that involves good photos, for example. So I think being able to take an inventory of what we have in terms of people, products and services, location, organizational features, what is it about us that makes our organization unique, and potentially other resources we can draw on to create content, and then matching that up with the existing channel options we have is a good way to go about determining where we should be and where we have the most opportunity to actually build really strong brand communities. So I want to, here's just one example of what we did at Zagg. On the left, you can see what types of content we're actually promoting on social media. Very little of it is about our products and services. You see only 8% represent offers about Zagg products. The rest of it is about Zagg news, what we're doing as a company. Giveaways represents a portion, and a lot of what we do is sending traffic to our blog, where we have multiple daily blog posts about issues, news, interesting how-to tutorials that would be relevant to tech users. People who are already interested in technology are the same people who are likely to be interested in our products. And so by driving traffic to blog posts, then we are able to get people interested and introduced to Zagg and our product lineup. One of the things that we did really successfully is we actually gave away an iPad every hour on Black Friday, which is right after Thanksgiving. So the great thing about that is that in order to enter to be entered to win an iPad, you had to first enter in your email address, and then if you want extra entries, you could share the contest on Facebook or Twitter. Well, what this was designed to do was really to build the growth of our email community, because what we found is that email represents a much more profitable community for us, and being able to market to our customers than trying to market to those same groups on Facebook or Twitter. So a lot of what our efforts were involved in is driving people towards signing up for our email list, so then we could have much more control over the messaging and the frequency. And that ended up being a great profit source for us. Okay, but I want to go back and I want to talk specifically about content marketing and why that's so important and how it works. You see that in 2013, it represents the highest priority for in-house digital marketers. They want information and they want to improve in how they're doing their content marketing. But a lot of misunderstanding exists about what content marketing even is. You'll get a lot of differing opinions. My personal feeling is that content represents a really great competitive, source of competitive advantage if it's used to grow and engage brand communities. And that's a lot of what we see happening, is people using content not necessarily to immediately advertise their products, but to build the communities that then they'll be able to advertise and market to later in more controlled situations. And there are a lot of benefits to it. Some of the studies suggest that customers don't mind reading content that's created by brands, that companies feel more positive about, or customers feel more positive about companies when they read content. So what makes it work? Well, I think there are actually a couple of different mechanisms if we're talking about B2C content marketing versus B2B content marketing. So B2C, you think if we are able to create good content, people like our content, they're more likely to like our brand. And if they're engaging with that content on our website, then they're much more likely to either consider our brand. In the case of Zagg, you notice over here we've got a blog post. So if somebody comes to Zagg and they're reading this blog post and they like the content, well, there's a chance that they will see this other information we have in the sidebar advertising our products. And what we actually did find is that there's actually a strong correlation between the number of visits we were able to drive to the Zagg blog and the amount of revenue we were getting from people who entered the blog and read blog posts. And so for us, that's an interesting sign that a lot of it really is, in some respects, a numbers game. Our ability to create really interesting, engaging content that brought people to the website, we know that a fraction of those people will be interested in something like screen protectors or iPhone cases, and will naturally gravitate towards investigating and considering and purchasing our products. Now, B2B content marketing could be a little bit different because just based on the nature of our business model, what we're trying to accomplish. In the case of GE, you'll notice they're doing a lot of content through blogging. They have one blog, for example, called Edison's Desk. It's all about innovation and the future of technology. And what we see when we're talking about B2B content marketing is some of it has to do with lead generation, right? Driving people to the website, and so then they fill out lead forms and are interested in purchasing our services in some respects. But some of it is just about driving brand trust and certain brand perceptions we're trying to cultivate. In this case, when people view GE as more innovative, then the more innovative companies are likely to want to work with GE. And so if we can consistently create good content, then we're going to be able to create communities around that particular brand image that we're trying to present. And sometimes that results in subscriptions to the blog or to other things we have to capture those community members, and sometimes people are going to fill out lead forms right on the spot. But I think B2B content marketing may have a little bit longer cycle in terms of developing trust and the revenue outcomes that we're looking for. You can see that some other examples of B2B content marketing. ExactTarget is an email marketing company, and they do a lot of good quality content related to how to do email marketing better. But you see that they have done a really good job of integrating channels to get people into their consideration funnel once they've read this blog post. And I think that's one place that one source of failure for a lot of companies is that they invest in content and they want to show ROI from that content, but they haven't integrated the content with actual profit-driving site goals. I think ExactTarget's does a good job of this because they are integrating several different ways that people get to know about ExactTarget and their products after viewing that content initially. Some other peripheral routes to revenue. Here are a couple of examples. So Airbed and Breakfast or Airbnb, they create guides about local cities and neighborhoods within cities. The idea is that Airbnb represents an exchange marketplace online where they're trying to match up people who might be offering their rooms or apartment rooms for a cheaper rate than hotels, and trying to match those people up with people who are traveling and looking for cheaper places to stay. So people aren't actually trying to buy directly from Airbnb. However, they need to trust them enough to want to go through the sites to set up something like staying overnight somewhere at a place they've never been before. So one way Airbnb does this is by creating these local community guides to show, hey, look, we know about the communities you're going to be and the areas you're going to be staying at, and you can trust us. And I think that they do a really good job at that. Home Depot is another example of a company that does something very interesting. So you see, here's an example of video content that they've created, how to install or replace or install a toilet. Well, the interesting thing is that obviously Home Depot sells a lot of products that would help you do this, so maybe by watching the video you're going to see, okay, I feel good about doing this myself. I'm going to be able to go buy a bunch of Home Depot products to help me. But the other interesting thing is that Home Depot actually also offers this type of thing as a service. So you can hire them to replace and install your toilet. But what watching a video about how to do it yourself might do is tell you that you may not completely be up to the job, or it's a little bit more time and energy, a little bit more involved than you can handle, and so you may be more likely to hire them. So I think that's a great example of where they've used content to potentially drive product and service revenues. To wrap up, I want to make sure that we hit home on the point that content strategy and SEO and social media are all about building advantage, right? A lot of people have strategies, but those strategies don't necessarily drive profit, don't necessarily make them more competitive in the marketplace. I like IBM, this statement that quality content is the cost of discovery. They've done a really good job of integrating search marketing with social media, with content, and from their standpoint, they're seeing a lot of success in generating search lift in their rankings while they're creating engagement and building their communities, and they're able to lift their brands in terms of their awareness and how much people like them, and that all contributes to driving more profitability and a stronger company for them. So thanks. With that, we've got a few questions. You're welcome to chime in and chat some questions in. We'll try and answer what we're able to in the time we've got. So let me just take a look here. One question asks, can you over-optimize your on-page SEO? And is that a bad thing? Well, I think it used to be a lot more common. You'd see websites that would put all kinds of keywords in a very unnatural way on the same page, just because they want to try and rank for every possible keyword. It is possible to over-optimize. That's usually why I tell people to stick to maybe one keyword per 100 words of content. Try not replicate the same word more than once or twice in 100 words. So that explains why you need both the right keywords, but you also need enough content to support going after multiple keywords. So that'd be a good way to avoid over-optimizing. Okay, I've got another question. If I'm an online marketing manager for a brand, should I be spending equal time growing and optimizing SEO and social media and content marketing, or is one more important than the rest? I think that's a great question. It's also not an easy question to answer, because depending upon your business, the nature of your products and services, you may find that certain channels are likely to drive much more success and much more quickly than others. One key example would be, I worked with a startup company who was in the education space and had developed some educational products that were kind of new and unique and innovative. There wasn't necessarily an existing demand for them in terms of search, which, and from that standpoint, because it's a brand new website, it takes a little longer to actually get the site authority needed to support rankings. So if they had gone after SEO to begin with and put a lot of resources into that, they probably would have seen pretty low returns compared to driving traffic and interest through content marketing or even social media. But there are definitely considerations to be made about what type of company you operate, what type of goals you have for your website, and how can we best match those up with what our audience wants, both our current customers and potential customers. That's a good question, though.
All right. I think that's all the questions we have, right, Scott?
Yeah, that's all I'm seeing.
Perfect. Well, I'm sure everyone here can agree with me. I mean, I have a notepad full of takeaways and some awesome actionable items that I can start implementing right away with Stukent as a brand, and also with some of my own things that I have going on the side. If our students and professors want to learn more about you and follow what you've got going on, some of the exciting things that you'll be doing now and in the future, what's the best way for them to do that? I know you briefly mentioned a few areas in the beginning, but remind us one more time.
Yeah, I'm always happy to answer questions. I try and make myself really available and respond to people quickly. So you can either catch me on Twitter, just at Scott Cowley, my name, or you can message me through my website, scottcowley.com. I try and keep it nice and simple.
Awesome. All right, there you have it. Next week, same time, same place, we will have Benjamin Beck, who is a very energetic online marketer. He's the founder of Local Stampede, and we're excited to have him on board with us as well. And once again, thanks, Scott, for everything today.